So today's subject is Bhagavad Gita. Is it about Dharma or is it about Moksha? And if it's about both, then which one is given priority? This is a very important question because Bhagavad Gita today is largely taught by people who run around in orange robes and who are constantly preaching that one should aspire for moksha. But the Bhagavad Gita was never intended in that manner. The Bhagavad Gita very clearly states, Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Lord Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita and says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijami aham. Whenever there is a decline in dharma and a rise in adharma, at that time do I appear on this earth. He never says, Yada yada hi mokshasya. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya. So Krishna is not worried about moksha, about your moksha. Because Krishna knows that if you are performing dharma in the correct manner, then moksha is assured to you. So we have in our Vedic tradition that there are four purusharths. One is dharma, one is artha, one is kama, and one is moksha. One is dharma, one is artha, one is kama, and one is moksha. So therefore, dharma is to do your duty, to fulfill your religious obligations, to fulfill your social obligations, to fulfill all the duties that rest upon you. Artha is to acquire wealth. Kama is to have pleasures of the senses. And lastly, one has moksha. Artha and kama, you don't really have to engage in purushartha, because dharma and artha will come to you automatically as a result of your prarabdha, as a result of your past credits that have been owed to you. Both artha and kama will come to you. Your wealth and your sensual pleasures, legitimate sensual pleasures, will come to you unasked. But for dharma and for moksha, one must make effort. And therein lies a lot of contradictions that existed in society in India at that time. You see, India, you can say, was the Silicon Valley of religions at one time. And what do I mean by Silicon Valley of religions? It was full of startup religions. Anyone could bring a startup religion, and provided he could attract enough followers, well, voila, that was your religion, new religion. But broadly, there were two types of religions that were existing at that time. One form of religion was the Vedic religion, which was a theistic religion, a religion that acknowledged the presence of God, acknowledged the supremacy of the Vedas as spiritual texts, and believed that they should do their duty. On the other hand, there was what we call the Shramana philosophies. And the Shramana philosophies were those religions that did not believe in God, that did not believe in necessarily fulfilling your social obligations. They believed in non-violence, and they said that one must aspire primarily for moksha and relief from suffering. So you had two types of religions. One was the Shramana philosophy, where the focus was on moksha, and the other philosophy, which was Vedic religions, which were where the focus was on performing dharma. Now you should understand that the pursuit of moksha was not excluded from Vedic philosophy. It was part and parcel of the process of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. It believed in fulfilling one's obligations and one's duties, and by fulfilling one's obligations and duties, one in the right spirit, spirit of renunciation and devotion, one became automatically Jivan Mukt, and at the time of leaving the body, they became Videha Mukt. They achieved salvation in this life while living, and they attained salvation while leaving the body. That is freedom from the cycle of birth and death and reunion with God. So because these two religions differed in that way, and for some time there was a gradual, slow overlap between the religions. And the slow overlap that occurred within the religions was that certain aspects of the Vedic philosophies were drifting away from Dharma, and they were going more towards Shramana philosophy. And Shramana philosophy was very much deeply grounded in external renunciation, the law of karma, and the avid pursuit of moksha. So what was happening? To understand what was happening, we must see what happened to the Shramana philosophies much later, because Bhagavad Gita was much earlier than these other development of the Shramana philosophies. The Shramana philosophies eventually developed, or what remains of them, because the prominent religions that remain of them are Buddhism and Jainism. But as you can see, Buddhism and Jainism, in essence, revere, worship, and follow people who are in the renounced order of life. So if you are a Muni, if you are a Arihant, if you are a monk, Buddhist monk, you will receive great respect from everybody. And everyone will aspire to become like you, because they will feel that if not in this life, then perhaps I am fortunate in the next life, I will also take sannyas. And by renouncing the world, I will also become free from the cycle of birth and death. But that was not the philosophy of those who followed the Vedic philosophy. Because the Vedic philosophy clearly taught that we must perform our duties, must fulfill our responsibilities, and if we do that in a spirit of devotion and renunciation, we will attain moksha. So you will win both on the material platform and on the spiritual platform. So this is very, very, very important. Even if you go to the Upanishads like Isha Upanishad, it clearly states that Andha Tama Pravishanti Avidyam Upasate Tato Bhuya Ivate Tamo Ya Vidyam Rataha. that those who pursue material things alone go into great darkness, but those who pursue spirituality alone go into even greater darkness. But those who pursue materialism and spirituality side by side, like the two wings of a bird, they are happy in this world and the next. And this verse from the Ishopanishad is given in greater detail in the Bhagavad Gita. Because the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly enunciates that one must not run away from doing one's duty. That one has a duty, one has responsibilities, one has many duties to perform, and one must perform these duties. And through the performance of these duties in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to this all-pervading Lord, we will all attain perfection. Krishna says, Yataha pravritir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmana abhyarchaya siddhim vindati manavaha. That all people, through the performance of their God-given duty, right, will attain peace, perfection, and the supreme destination when it is performed as a sacrifice and an offering to this all-pervading Lord. So, as I said, many parts of Vedic philosophy were gradually drifting towards Shramana philosophies. Much later, many aspects of Sankhya became atheistical. But originally, basically the Sankhya philosophy was part of one of the darshanas of the Vedas, and it was very much theistic. And that is the philosophy described as the primary philosophy in the Bhagavad Gita. So, are we expected to work towards moksha, or are we expected to do dharma? As Krishna says, when there is a rise in adharma, at that time I appear. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come to deliver saintly people. I come to destroy the evildoers. I come to re-establish the principles of dharma. So the principles of dharma are basically this. You cannot abandon your duties. You cannot abandon your responsibilities. And to do so is indeed a path which is full of sorrow, especially if you are not liberated. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly warns Arjuna. First he says that there are two ways, two paths. Sannyasas karma yogascha nihashreyasya karavubhau tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. That there are two paths that lead to salvation. One, he says, is to work with devotion, and the other is to renounce the world, that is to abandon dharma. But he says between the two, both of them may lead to salvation. But between the two, Krishna says that the path of working on the path of dharma in a spirit of renunciation and devotion is by far superior. He also clearly says, Sannyasastu mahabhao dukkham aptum ayogata. You will get only sorrow. If without having attained union with God, you aspire to renounce the world, indeed, you will get only sorrow. Dukkham aptum. You will get only sorrow. Yoga yukta munir brahma na chirena adi gacchati. But indeed, he says, if you work in a spirit of devotion and renunciation, then you'll find it is by far superior. See, you have to understand that, why people value people who are renounced goes back to ancient days. And much after the Bhagavad Gita, people were glorified for renouncing the world. You had, the Buddha who renounced the world, and everyone called it the great renunciation because the prince has renounced the world. Similarly, you will find that if you look in Jain philosophy and history, you will find that the renunciation of Mahavir, who was a king, was also glorified. And in fact, because of that, they glorify renunciation even till today. Not too long back, but long enough, there was a diamond merchant who renounced and became a renunciate, an anchorite. And he went on an elephant throwing diamonds in the air to show how little he cares for these things. And it caused a huge sensation. The newspapers covered him everywhere. So in fact, renunciation has always been glorified. But the Bhagavad Gita does not glorify renunciation. Bhagavad Gita clearly puts renunciation on a platform below working in the world in a spirit of devotion and renunciation. Because the Bhagavad Gita believes that performing your duty, doing your dharma in a spirit of renunciation and devotion to God is by far superior to renouncing the world and becoming a mendicant. If you actually look at the Bhagavad Gita repeatedly points out what a sannyasi is. Gneyasa nitya sannyasi yo na dveshati na kankshati nirdvandvo nitya hi mahabhao sukham bandhat pramuchyate. Gneyasa nitya sannyasi, that person who is known to be constantly in a state of renunciation of the world, is one who neither hates, nor dveshati, nor kankshati, nor that is the desire or anchor for anything. Nirdvandvo, free from dualities. Hi mahabhao sukham bandhat pramuchyate. Such a person, Krishna says, is one who in fact is liberated from the bonds of Prakriti. So the truth is that the pursuit of moksha over dharma is a selfish, salvation-centric pursuit. You are so concerned with self that you abandon the world, saying that I will abandon the world so that by abandoning the world, truly I shall attain moksha. But indeed, my friends, that is not what the Bhagavad Gita says. The Bhagavad Gita very clearly, repeatedly, constantly keeps saying that those who renounce the world, but in their minds they are not liberated, they are indeed fools. Nahi kaschid shanam api tistatya karmakrit karyate avashya karma sarve prakriti jan guna. Nahi kaschid kshanam api, not for one instant. Tishtati akarmakrit. You cannot remain for an instant without performing some activity. So either you are performing your duty or you are performing activities that lead to your degradation. So the Bhagavad Gita clearly wants people to focus on their duty and their responsibility. Repeatedly, again and again and again, you will see in 6.1 also, Krishna points out to Arjuna, Anashritaha karma phalam karya karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha. One who performs his God-given duties in a spirit of sacrifice to this all-pervading Lord. He is that without seeking the fruits of his labor. He is the true yogi, he is the true sannyasi, not one who lights no fire and does no work. 6.1. So Krishna wants asakta buddhir sarvatra jitatma vigata spriya naishkarmyam paramam siddhim sannyasen adhigacchati. For one who roams in the world with his mind attached to none, this is called sannyas. So asakta, without attachment. Buddhi sarvatra, his mind is not attached to anything. Jitatmaha vigataspriya, his mind and senses are under control. Naishkarmyam paramam siddhim, he is performing activity and yet he is not performing activity. He is untouched by the activity he performs. This is known as sannyas. Yagnartharth par karmano nyatra, loko yam karma bandhana, tadartham karma kaunteya, mukta sangha samachara. Actually, you are all very intelligent people and you're all clued into the news. So all you need to do is to turn on the news and you will see for yourself. Every now and then you will see appearing in the news that sannyasis are being arrested for molesting women, for rape, for performing all kinds of heinous activities, which they should never be performing, because they're supposed to have renounced the world and also they're supposed to have taken vows of celibacy. But their life, it seems, is far, far more involved in material things than what most devout people who live in society are. So, in fact, in the Brahma Vaivarta Puran, it clearly says that in Kali Yuga, sannyas is forbidden. Sannyas is forbidden in Kali Yuga. Ashwamedam gavalambam sannyasam palapaitrakam devarena sutotpatim kalau pancham vivarjayet. Very clearly it says that indeed these 5 things are forbidden in Kali Yuga. Which 5? Horse sacrifice, cow sacrifice, sacrifice and eating meat at Shrad, eating products of violence at Shrad, marrying your brother's widow, and taking of sannyas. All these 5 are forbidden in Kali Yuga. So, the tragedy was that at the time when Shramana philosophies reached their preponderance, their when they were most popular, much after the Bhagavad Gita, because after all, Buddha and also Mahavir lived approximately the same time and perhaps not too far away. People would throw stones when these renunciates would come to their villages, because they would come to the village, they would sponge off the villagers like social parasites, and like locusts carrying away everything that was valuable, they would carry away the young by enticing them with stories of how to attain moksha. In fact, society could not survive if these moksha-centric religions were allowed to grow unchecked. It's very important to understand this. If everybody gave their children, and nobody wanted to give their children, so there were acts of violence against these non-violent monks. And finally, even the Buddha insisted that if somebody who was underage or a child wanted to join him, then that person who was underage had to bring with him a certificate from his parents saying that they were gladly and happily letting him go to join Buddha. So society, the maintenance of society requires dharma. And for one who protects dharma, dharma protects him. Dharma rakshati rakshitaha. If you are a protector of dharma, dharma will protect you. If you protect society, society will protect you. So dharma is what Krishna came to re-establish. Moksha is a given. Right from the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita till the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna repeatedly points out the Sthita Prajna. He points out who is the yogi. He points out who is the karma yogi. He points out who is the bhakta. He points out who is the gunatita. He is constantly pointing out what is jivan mukta. And the purpose of becoming jivan mukta is that if you are jivan mukta, you can perform your dharma even more beautifully and elegantly and precisely and gloriously. So dharma is most important. Moksha will help you to perform dharma even better. In fact, Krishna clearly states that because you have attained dharma, because you have attained moksha, that does not mean that you have to give up your work, even though you don't need to perform your duty. Krishna says that for one who has become united with God, with the soul, for him there is no duty. In chapter 3, verse 17, Krishna says, Yastva atma ratireva syad atma triptascha manavaha atmanya eva cha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. Those who rejoice in the soul, who are illumined within, who are satisfied within, for them there is no duty. For one who is engaged, who is attained Jivan Mukti, Krishna goes so far as to say that there is no need to perform duty. And elsewhere he has said that without attaining moksha, taking sannyas will lead to sorrow. But here he points out that if you have already attained moksha, then there is no real duty for you to perform. But he says, Naiva tasya kriten artho na kritenaha kaschanaha na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschid artha vyapashraya. For the self-realized soul, They have nothing to gain or lose by performing or renouncing their duties. Nor do they have to depend on other living beings to fulfill any self-interest. So you have to understand one thing. Today you may be suffering. You may be suffering for various reasons. Maybe your boss doesn't like you. Maybe you are having trouble in your workplace. Maybe you are not being paid sufficiently for your needs. So there may be so many problems. So you say, better I leave everything and become sannyas. But Krishna says, if you attain moksha, if you have become jivan mukta, then you are at peace. Dukheshu anudvigna mana sukheshu vigata spriya vita raga bhaya krodha stitadi muni ichate. Then, having attained jivan mukta, you will neither jump with joy nor will you sink with sorrow. You will be free from attachment, fear, and anger. Jitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahitah sitoshana sukha dukeshu tata manapmanayo. For one who has conquered his mind, for him God is already reached. For him, heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, they're all the same. So what difference does it make whether you perform your duty or you don't perform your duty? So Krishna says, even for those who have attained the mukti, jivan mukti, for them there is no reason to stop working. Tasmad asakta satatam karyam karma samacharaha asakto hi acharan karma param apnoti purushaha. If you have attained jivan mukti, it doesn't matter to you what miseries are there at your workplace. There's no need for you to give it up. So therefore, Krishna's direct instruction to you is giving up attachments, perform your actions as a matter of duty, because by working without being attached to the fruits, you attain the supreme. And if you have attained the supreme, in such circumstances, Krishna says, you must continue to work. He does not give the example of kings who have renounced their kingly duties, royal duties. He says, Karmanaivi hi samsiddhim astita janakadaya loka sangram eva pi sampashyam kartum arasi. Yad acharati shreshta statta devataro jana sa yad pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Do your duties. Janak, King Janak and others attain perfection through the performance of their duties. And by doing your duties, you will set an example for the good of the world. For whatever examples you set, other people follow. And whatever standards are set by exemplary people, the rest of the world pursues. So a society which is built of Jivan Mukt people is the ideal society. Whereas a society which is falling apart by people who are selfishly seeking salvation is a horrible society. It's a useless society. It's a third-rate society. It's a society in a state of disintegration. And Bhagavad Gita therefore places Dharma first and says, certainly attain moksha. And through attainment of moksha, you will perform your dharma even better. But dharma is what is important. So with this, I will conclude here. You are welcome to question, challenge, discuss, share anything.
Good morning, sir. I'll begin with our first
Please
question.
speak loudly, I can't hear you.
So, am I audible now?
Increase the volume if you can.
Okay. So, now am I audible?
Okay.
Yeah. So, I was asking, why people move towards the Shramana philosophy, and what made them actually follow the Shramana and leave the Vedic philosophy of living at first place.
I told you, because they value moksha. They are selfishly salvation centric.
Okay, so sir, why did people find the liberation or moksha more attractive than performing their dharma?
Because they were suffering.
Okay, and they did not know the way to get out of their suffering through dharma.
Yes.
Okay.
Therefore, it was so important for Krishna to come and speak the Bhagavad Gita to make people realize the importance of living a life of dharma in a spirit of devotion and renunciation and attaining salvation.
Sure.
Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but the Bhagavad Gita has largely been hijacked by people who have renounced the world.
Exactly. So, sir, moving to another question. Sir, when we look at today's scenario, so then we see most of the people are bending towards more towards the teaching of the Shramana philosophy than the Vedic philosophy in
Who
today's
is
time.
who is doing that?
So usually most of the people are not understanding the meaning of and the importance of performing rituals and performing dharma. So why are they abandoning their dharma at all in today's time, and why are we running away
People, there
basically?
is a rise in our dharma because people have forgotten about dharma.
Hmm.
They've forgotten about dharma because no one is teaching Bhagavad Gita, at least not too many people are teaching Bhagavad Gita the way it was intended.
Hmm.
If
Misinterpretation.
you look around you, you will find that whoever is reading Bhagavad Gita must be having a Bhagavad Gita written by an orange robed person.
True. Sure, sir. So, sir, with that, moving to today's last question. Sir, usually people consider dharma as religion. So, can you
As
please,
being,
as a religion, they consider being dharmic means being religious. So,
yeah,
can you please?
religion means includes doing your duty.
Hmm. So, what does Bhagavad Gita tell about performing our dharma?
So Bhagavad Gita certainly asks you to perform all your religious duties along with your duties to society, family, etc.
Hmm. Okay, sir. So, how one can become dharmic, then getting away from his responsibilities?
Pardon?
So, I'm asking
So
how one can become.
whatever duties God has given you
Hmm.
in terms of family, in terms of profession, in terms of job, do it in a spirit of devotion and renunciation internally. Do it without seeking the fruits of your labor. Do it as an offering to Krishna with the idea Om Tat Sat. And when you are not working, chant Krishna's name.
Sure, because usually people nowadays are more into the fruits of their karma instead of the karma they are performing. Can
So
we say that?
therefore, remember God and forget yourself.
Hmm. Sure, sir. So, sir, these were our questions for today, and thank you so much for such an amazing session.
Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna, sir. Thank you so much.